What can life look like when we embrace our gifting and walk forward in surrender? Welcome to Rhythms That Restore. I'm your friend Cherisse that's ready to journey beside you. Let's learn rhythms that can restore our minds, hearts, bodies, and spirits, and allow us to walk confidently in who God has called us to be. Are you ready? Pull up a chair. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. Even more thrilled to have my friend Hillary joining us today. And y'all, we are going to be in a conversation all about walking in our gifting, walking in surrender, creating beauty, because that is exactly what this friend does. And for all of y'all that already know Hillary Butler here in Memphis, Tennessee, you know that that is who she is. She's just a walking, breathing ray of sunshine and joy and fun. And she embodies that in everything she does. So Hillary, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Cherisse. Thank you for that very generous intro. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And everybody that's watching too, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see Hillary's got all of her artwork behind her. And for many of you that already follow Hillary, you know, just the beautiful boldness of colors and everything that comes when we think of Hillary Butler fine art. So I love it. We're gonna hear the backstory. I want to hear the backstory of that. And let me tell you guys a little bit more about Hillary if you are new to the podcast. And Hillary, like me, is an avid lover of podcasts and of learning and of books, which is why we are great friends and we love learning together. But let me tell you guys a little bit about Hillary. So Hillary Butler lives here in Memphis, Tennessee. She was an art major turned English major turned graphic designer. So, you know, we're going to give all of you that are young in your career, we're giving you hope, because what you start doing is probably not going to be what you end doing, because everything leads to the next thing. So I love that you put that in your bio. It's just so cool to see what everything takes you to the next step. Hillary quit her 9-to-5 in 2011 to pursue art full time, which is so exciting. And we're going to hear more about that. Hillary also, her art has been, you have to tell us more about this, has been on the hit show Nashville. Oh my gosh, so cool. And she also has had the opportunity to show at Agora Gallery in New York. So cool. And you've been on several blogs, and in Better Homes and Gardens, Domino, and Design Love Fest. Hillary, that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So cool. She and her husband, David, have 2 young redheaded boys, Cedar, who is 8, and Fox, who is 6. And Fox and Brock are in the same class at school, which is how we met. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Hillary also is a podcast junkie, just like me, and she loves learning. She's a lover of long dinners with good friends, Sundays with a good book. And Hillary, as I was reading all of that and all of your incredible professional accolades, your incredible, beautiful family, your boys, I also was reflecting on, when I think of you, what do I think? And when I met Hillary, she was reaching out to me and wanting to bring me in and help me feel confident and welcomed and warm. And I knew nothing about Hillary's incredible talent. I just knew she was this warm and caring and kind mom that was reaching out to me as a mom of a 6-year-old, a boy mom. And I just think every time I think of you, it makes me smile. It makes me like almost my heart grin from like inside out, because I think she's just so super cool and like edgy and fun. And I laugh out loud. Like, if you guys don't follow Hillary on Instagram, you must, because she will just make your soul and your heart smile and laugh. I just love that. And I think, Hillary, that you not only create that for others, but you also invite others along as you are walking that way. So thank you for truly not only walking in your gifting of art, but just walking in who you are and how God created you to be, and then inviting us to walk beside you.
Thank you, friend. Thank you.
You're
That means a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, okay. Tell us a little bit more first. I do want to know curiously about how was your art featured in the show Nashville?
So it's one of those things where I think any opportunity, it's, somebody, somebody, and, right time, right place. So through the gram, I had posted, a friend of mine, Annabella Charles, is a photographer, had come to do photos in my studio, had done these gorgeous, really cool, creative photos. And she had posted one, and somebody who she's connected with worked on the show as a set decorator. And they saw my art. She tagged somebody they actually have an art buyer for the show. So they were a very unique show to work with, because most of the time they're like, will you ship us some stuff for free for the exposure? And they actually bought some stuff, which is incredible. And so they actually bought small pieces, and then they blew it up for like prints for the show. So it was actually in a hospital scene. I don't remember which season and which episode, but it was really fun to watch. And for the 0.275 seconds that it was up on the wall, we're like screenshotting it, and it was super fun. But you see how much time and effort goes into just one show, like one scene of one show takes these amazing teams. And it was super cool to get just a tiny little peek behind the curtain as to how, one of these big shows operates. But
yeah.
I have no idea what they did with these small originals that I sent them. I don't know. I'm did cast members get to take them? I don't know, but
Probably. Somebody's got some Hillary Butler fine art in their house.
They do. Just float around.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then how did, in your art that is featured in New York, tell us that story.
So that was earlier in my career. There was a gallery. They had approached me about being a part of a group show up there. And so it was definitely for more of a younger up and coming crowd. But it was just a fun opportunity to go. I was maybe 2 or 3 years into this. And so David and I were able to go up there, and it was fun because talking about one thing that leads to another, was able to take all these really cool packages with me. And so a friend of mine worked in publishing. She worked for, I think, Condé Nast and another company. Anyway, so she had some ends. And so I just went around town, and it was so fun. And we just dropped off all these little packages. And so the funny story, so I got into the feature in Domino because I am a really good Googler, really good. If you want me to find something, I will find it for you on the Google. And so people don't realize that when you buy a business and it's listed, there's an address there. So I show up at the offices of Domino, just show up with this package for their editor. And they were like, how did you find us? And I was like, it's on the internet. It's right. It's listed as your company. You may want to change that if you don't want people to know. But anyway, so it may have been 2 years later that they did, it was an online feature, which was super, super fun. But you just never know what, because you're so good at this too, thoughtful, happy, but personal thing that you can drop off in person, shows a warm personal touch, makes a huge impact, because so few people do that. And how that can have a ripple effect to where they, start following you or whatnot. When they think, oh, we need to feature this group of people that we follow on Instagram, they think of you. So I think too, in business, we often think of some of your immediate, you see some immediate effects, and then there's the ripple effect. And I think we just forget about the power of the ripple. And the power that our presence and our thoughtfulness can leave, and how it can also, not just to be an ambassador of Christ, but to just as a good business person.
I think so. You and I talk about this all the time too, for everyone listening that is a small business owner, which is a lot of our friends. In our digital world, being able to do small, thoughtful, tangible, in-person things are very impactful, because, and in my head, I'll be like, oh, everybody does that. They probably don't.
They don't.
And it's always that extra mile. What can we do to be willing to walk the extra mile and separate yourself? Yeah.
Even just own a business as a person, people remember, oh my gosh, remember that time you showed up on my door with bread, or My friend Cherisse showed up with like half a crown one day. She's like, I saw this crayon. It's the perfect shade of yellow. And she like tore it in half and handed it to me. And like, I'm still telling the story like 10 years later because it was so special because she showed up with something tangible and it was memorable.
That is so true. Because how many times can we think back, like if we've been sick or had a baby or who knows what, just had a bad day. And even if a friend just like left flowers at your door or a meal, you're like, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They saw you. Somebody saw you.
Right. Feeling seen.
So
That's so cool. All right. Well, thank you for that story and sharing that part of you. So you mentioned David and the boys, but I'd love to know, like, kind of go back. I don't even know if I remember this story. How did you and David meet?
We met at church a long time ago. It was college and career department. And I was college and he was career. But I was my senior year, so it wasn't too crazy. And we all ran in a friend group together. And I dated somebody else for a little bit. I didn't know he had a crush on me. And then when we broke up, he, somehow ended up calling me and we would talk for like 3 hours every night for like a month. And I was like, is this guy, does he just do this? Is he just really friendly or is he going to ask me out? But I didn't know what was up, but I knew that I really liked talking to him and it just felt like home. Mm-hmm. And so he finally did ask me out and we only dated 9 months before we got engaged. It was pretty fast, but like we were good buddies before.
Right.
So it was a pretty seamless, easy. Like we just knew.
Yep. And he is David from Memphis? And are you from Memphis? Like
both of us were born and raised. Yeah. He grew up Germantown, born and raised, went to ECS.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we ran in similar, like he's 6 years older. So like we overlapped in several ways, but didn't know each other because of the vast age difference. Like I'm so glad he did not meet me. I was at his high school graduation, but I was in 7th grade and I was super dorky. And I'm just so glad we didn't know each other.
You're like, Lord, that protection. Thank you for that.
I became a woman.
Don't we all think about that? Like the Lord knows best because we'll be frustrated in the timing. Like, what? Why? Why am I, in this season of life that feels hard and feels awkward? And the Lord's like, you're not ready. You're not ready yet.
Not even close. Not even.
Mm-hmm. And so he knows. I love it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know this until you had shared this a few weeks ago with me that David also teaches at ECS now.
Yes. So he's been there 22, I think he's starting his 23rd year. So
wow.
That was his first job out of college and he's been there all this time. So he loves that place so much, such a heart for those kids and what he does. It's really cool.
Has he always taught art?
He has. And he's done the past 5 years. He's done more on his title was Chief Memory Maker. So he got to just basically elevate the student experience for kids. And it's so perfect for him. So that's been a fun part of his job that he's enjoyed evolving into.
Mm-hmm. Well, for sure, being a creative, that's I would think so easy that comes to him.
Oh yeah. I mean, like the thing that's crazy is I have ideas, but I get like 4 ideas and he's going to have like 20, and he's like, how do we do the first day of school? And I would be like, I had this great idea once, let's just reuse it every year. And he can just reinvent it every year. And I'm like, how did you do that?
So cool.
Very envious of that skill set of his.
I love too that your household has 2 creatives in it. I mean, your boys are so lucky to have 2 parents that are fun and vivacious and creative all under one roof. That's just got to be so much fun.
I'm real curious to ask them if they feel lucky about that or if they're like, it's nuts. Can you please someone rescue us from these crazy people?
I don't think so. It's so neat. I was listening to a podcast today, Wild at Heart. I love that podcast. And today it was so good. And it was talking about creativity. And I thought, Lord, this is so perfect that today I would be listening and talking with Hillary. And I love how he shared that as we are walking and growing in our journey and really healing our soul and looking inward towards Christ, that we flourish more in our creativity. Isn't that neat? Because for so long, when we're kind of in survival mode, we kind of stay stuck and the enemy will kind of push down a lot of that creativity. And I thought that's so true as I've been learning a little bit more about that, but and you and I both have been on this journey, it has been neat to see how, as we're healing that inner part of us, we do start flourishing more and walking in our gifting.
I don't think I'd ever heard it put like that before, but it makes so much sense because, we've all heard all the therapists talk about like our inner child has to be healed, and who is more creative than a child? Like I can't tell you how many parents will come up to me and be like, my daughter, she's going to be an artist one day. She just draws and she paints all the time. And it's so funny because I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I'm like, every kid does that. But we just have to be careful to nurture that and to encourage their creativity. But also, parents don't want that to die, but I think, junior high just tends to kill that in people. Mm-hmm. And so, but you're right. Like, what does the enemy do? But that's the heart of insecurity, right? It's just saying, become bland, else, blend in, don't shine in the unique gifting that God has given you to shine in. And that's what he keeps us small, and he keeps us from glowing and just in shining and being this, imaging the creator and the way that we were uniquely designed to image.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I know. It is. And then, oftentimes I talk about it a lot on the podcast. I'll ask everybody their 10-year-old question, which we'll get to at the end. But it is so true, because up until about 10, we don't really care what other people think. We want to sing, we want to laugh, we want to jump, we want to do all those things that God's put in us. But then kind of come middle school, people start kind of squashing that and pushing that down, and we start caring too much about what others think. And we kind of even will buy into some of the guilt and the shame that the enemy wants to put on us. And so that's why, I love that we have this space to talk about this on the podcast, and for all of us to be like, hold on, no more. We are not walking in that way anymore. Mm-hmm. We are going to know the tactics of the enemy, and we're not going to buy into that.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Preach, girl.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I remember back to I'm going to take everyone back. I remember back to the first time that we really got to have a real conversation. It was at a children's birthday party at the Ninja Gym or Sega Gym or something. Mm-hmm. Remember?
It was a kid's space. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. We're watching boys jumping all over the place. Yeah. And it's so funny because it's the middle of a kid's birthday party, and it was so profound. I needed to hear it so much. I don't even know why you brought up this story, but Hillary started talking about John Mark Comer and practicing the way and spiritual disciplines. And I don't even remember what was happening around us. It was like my focus on you and what you were saying. It was so timely. I remember driving away thinking, Lord, only you can do that. Only you can do that. Why would Hillary have even mentioned any of this to me? Because I needed it so very much. Mm-hmm. And so kind of share with us a little bit about where you even learned about some of these different spiritual rhythms and how that has impacted your life.
Yeah. So my friend Laura introduced me to John Mark Comer. She's been a fan of his for a while, and she started me on the podcast. I want to say, because he had maybe it was that Rhythms of Grace or Rhythms of something. And then he had another one. It was Fight, Hustle, and Hurry with the guy who wrote To Hell with the Hurry, I think. And so I think they combined their two books together. So John Mark wrote The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I had actually heard a lot of people talk about the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry book. And everyone's like, it's life-changing. You're going to have to read it. And I didn't read it. Oh, you got it, girl. Shameless plug. And I intentionally did not read it because I knew I was going to change after I read that. And I did not want to make changes. And is that not how the enemy gets in our life of like, hey, you are living in these really unhealthy patterns, but you cannot let them go. And the interesting thing is like the rhythms of grace that the Lord invites us to, it's pure freedom. It's pure joy. It's everything that we're supposed to walk in, we were created to walk in. And yet what does the enemy do? The first thing he wants you to do is, what did he tell you to do? Like, oh, God doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to go ahead and eat this fruit because you know better. And that was me. I was like, excuse me, I'm doing just fine over here. I'm this crazy, frantic person. I don't want to make any changes. And so I think Laura introduced me to the podcast because I was like, okay, I can do a podcast. A book, that's a little intense, but I'll do a podcast because that's all I do while I work. And I started listening and I was like, holy shoot, like this is incredible. And the more I started listening, the more I was like, this is not burdensome, because I think in our brains, we think if I slow down, if I stop, if I start really practicing the way that Jesus teaches us to live, that it will feel like a yoke. It will feel heavy, and which is such a lie. And I'm listening to this and I was like, who wouldn't want to live like this? This is pure joy and freedom. Because when he's talking about Sabbath, I had never, ever, growing up in the church, spent 40 years following Jesus, and never heard anybody talk about the Sabbath the way that they did. And he explained it. He says, in the Sabbath, you stop, rest, delight, and worship. These 4 things that you do. And he says, and what do? You treat it like you would a holiday, right? And like, who wouldn't want one day a week to feel like a holiday? And it was just like, my brain was just blown open. And it was like completely revolutionized the way that I started looking at just these rhythms of restoration. It's joy and freedom. And I think the thing that I keep going back to is that, when Jesus asks us to do something, it's never a compulsion to follow the rules. Like if you're ever feeling a compulsion to follow the rules, that is not from the Lord. It's always an invitation to intimacy. And it's always for an invitation to joy and to peace and to rest and restoration. And I just learned it was Sunday. One of our friends was speaking in church, and he was talking about the Good Samaritan. And he was actually explaining to us about how rabbis actually taught. And it was incredible. I did not realize this, that you're smiling, you probably know this, is that the rabbis, it's actually their teachings and the things that they would ask their followers to follow. They called that their yoke. I did not realize this. And so Jesus was saying, who was a rabbi, he was saying, like, take my yoke on you, take my teachings upon you. Mm-hmm. And then you'll be rest. And it was just like so revolutionary to me to also hear this as well. So I just feel like the Lord, you never outgrow learning about the Lord. You never outgrow growing and developing as a believer. And I just feel like I've just been in such a rich season of learning and growing. I think it's because I've allowed myself to rest and to just really sit in the presence of the Lord and open myself up to, like, what do you have to teach me? And it's kind of crazy because it's never what I think he's going to show me.
No,
ever.
No, I've never heard that. I'm so glad you shared that, because we have all, we read that. And so we've heard the passage of scripture, like what is it? My yoke is easy. And
like,
yes. And so, but without that context, we're like, what? Like an ox? Like,
why would I put that on me? That's weird.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But when you say teaching, okay. Mm-hmm. And I love the visual of thinking of Sabbath as a holiday, because I think sometimes we'll say Sabbath, and then for me, I can so quickly in my little Enneagram 2-ness go to guilt and shame quickly, like, oh, I don't do that right. Oh, bummer. And so then all this.
Yeah.
Yes. But if I reframe that and go, this is a gift, which it is a gift. Like, that is why God, he gave this to us as a gift. And so why not reframe it and think, what a beautiful thing that Jesus is inviting us to a holiday with him, once a week. And what were the 4 things that you said, or 5 things?
Stop, rest, worship, and delight. Because I don't know about you, but growing up in evangelical circles, I remember distinctly hearing that from the pulpit, we are freed from the Sabbath. Like, we no longer have to do Sabbath anymore because the Sabbath was so heavy and that's terrible. We don't have to do that anymore. And it's no, we are free for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for us. Like Jesus says, it was created. You weren't created for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for you. And it's just so funny how we're like, nope, got it. I'm good.
Right. Because what I'm doing is working so well.
Right. I'm losing my mind. I'm a crazy person, but I'm just going to keep on this train. But I think our family, so David and I, our growing up, we always rested a lot on the Sabbath. And it was all church. We were at church. We ate a big meal together. We all took big naps. We went back to church. So I feel like from what I've learned about Sabbath, I was actually telling my parents, I was like, y'all did a really great job. You didn't even realize you were doing Sabbath in a really great way. And so our immediate family, me and David and the kids, have always done that, like had a practice of rest. But it was not, I never really felt like it was super restorative, because so I've been trying really hard to like turn off my phone and being intentional about, are we with community, and just practicing a deeper walk into Sabbath. Like, how can this feel like a holiday? And I mean, maybe 1 out of 10 times I feel like we actually like nail it on the head. But I mean, this is a practice, right? We're working towards something better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's why they call it a practice. Like, we don't ever really master it, but it does give us a focus, and it gives us a kind of a guardrail to walk it into practice.
It gives you a goal, something to try to do.
I heard you say too, like practicing gathering and community. And I know that's something you and I've talked about also, is having a heart for wanting to gather others, and to really, because Jesus modeled that for us. And we've talked about that before, that, he invites us to be in solitude with him, to like sit in his truth and steep in his word, and then process it and ponder and pray with him. But then he says, go back out. And so kind of tell us a little bit more about your heart for community and what you kind of have been feeling led to the last year.
I'm an Enneagram 7. And so my struggle has never been to move towards community. So I actually have an opposite struggle that I've had that a lot of people have. So it's not that I had to move towards community for Sabbath or towards community for growing people. It was actually, I've been trying to hone in on the best community that I need to be with, because I was talking with a friend about like who we were hanging out with in college. She's like, yeah, like 5 best friends, and we hung out together all the time. And when she was like, who are your people in college? And I was like, did they have a pulse? Then I was hanging out with them. Just all people, all the time, all work. And then you realize, because we were created for a community, but if you do a community like that, you are never going to get refreshed or restored. And so I would say I turned 40 in 2 months. So I've spent this last decade, I've called it cleaning out the friendship closet, is the analogy that I keep going back to. And it's not that people weren't lovely, and it's not that they weren't great people. It was just, we're limited, we're finite. And there was only so many people I could invest in before it's just completely not even, you're counterproductive at some point if you're trying to talk to everybody and make touch points with everybody. And so especially this past year, I think I've just tried to be very intentional with spending time with people who are restorative. And obviously the Lord puts people in your life that we're investing in, right? That aren't going to be necessarily pouring back to you. But I had a really sweet counselor tell me, she was like, Hillary, that needs to be like 10% of your relationships. Because again, you're finite. You're not Jesus. He can pour out indefinitely without anyone pouring back in, because he is completely fulfilled within himself, right? We are not. And so I've really had to pull back, and even just it's killing me. And I know that you as a lover of people too, it's so hard when you're going, but I physically can drive to her house and drop this off. I physically can polo her. I've actually intentionally had to go, you know what? I would absolutely love and adore to keep up with this person. But at this point, I have to draw a line somewhere, because this is sucking the life out of me. So that's actually been almost like a reverse community journey for me. But I've gone, and I think as a 7, our constant, what's the word I'm looking for? Our constant challenge is to go smaller and deeper. Because it's so easy. I mean, we're so easy to expand. Like we can bring on a new friend. It's no big deal. But to really hone that in and to go deeper with a smaller group of people, that's really what I've been focusing on. And that has been so beautiful. And to actually tell myself, we do have this free weekend. You are not allowed to book it because you need rest. I mean, I know it's like, and like introverts out there are like, no duh. And you're like, I don't know what to is on realism.
The struggle is real for me. If there is blank space, I want to fill it. I want to fill it so bad. Yes. But I think regardless of what your Enneagram number is, that is a realization that we all do eventually come to, that we do have a limited capacity. We cannot be all things to all people. And as much as we think we can. And for some women, maybe you're like, nope, I think I still can. But for some of us, we're like, no, we've reached that moment where we just can't. Like we find ourselves at the end of the day completely spent, where we look at those we love the most. We show up at home and we're like, I don't have anything. I don't have anything for you. And I was famous for that. I gave everybody else the best of me, and I gave my guys what was left. And I just, because I'd never had anyone tell me, you can't do it, Cherisse. You can't do it. That was a tough spot. That was a tough pill to swallow.
That's the worst. I have been there so many times. And I think I read Shauna Niequist. Do you read anything by her?
Yes.
Oh, she had, I think it was her book. Anyway, doesn't matter. But she said, it hit me between the eyes. It was so convicting. And she talks about quick love. Do you remember reading? I don't know if you remember reading this part. She talked about, she's like, she came to a point where she realized, she goes, everybody loves me except for the people in this house. And she realized I was chasing after quick love because, you know, you drop off something, you do something nice for a friend, and it's that beautiful affirmation. And women are so good at that. You're amazing. I can't live without you. And your family's not going to do that. Thank you for making my laundry. Thank you. I love you. And it's so hard to serve, to get up and to serve day in, day out, you know, without that, especially that affirmation that we really do need. Mm-hmm. But it's quick. Mm-hmm. And the people you show quick love to may not always be there for you like your family will, you know, when stuff hits the fan.
Right.
You have to remember that it's that long-term love you're going for, which is why it is so important to build a smaller, deeper, I mean, your home base of community. Obviously, the Lord calls us to touch, you know, to love each person we come into contact with each day to the ability that we're able to.
Yeah, whew. I know. And to ask ourselves the question, because me as a 2 who loves to give and love to give little things out. I remember my friend Brittany Christie was like, Cherisse, that's great, but you have to always ask yourself, what's the motivation? And so I was like, ooh, shut up. Like, don't say this to me. Because she said, if your motivation is pure, that's great. But if it is looking for affirmation from someone else, if it is looking for an accolade from someone else that you should be getting from Christ, then that's where you need to start. I was like, oh, that is some hard truth I didn't want to hear. Right.
Oh, it's so easy. I realize, and I'm just like, love me, please love me. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you finally have to sit down and realize, why am I doing this? And it's often like, oh, it's out of a lot of insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, right. Those are some hard truths. Everybody's like, stop it, y'all. They're stepping on my toes.
Nice, Brittany.
I told her, I was like, I just want you to know we pretty much talk about you in every episode because she's got so much wisdom. But I also know that the second time when we got together and we had tea at your house, you were also sharing with me some really cool rhythms that you were putting into play that I had not yet adopted, and I still haven't. As far as being a wife and a mom and a business owner, and just really practicing and putting some intentional margin into your schedule. Remember you telling me that, and I was wide-eyed, like, wait, hold on, what are you doing? So tell everybody a little bit more about that, because I do think that regardless of where women are, placing intentional margin around some time to yourself to fill up is important. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Will you share on that?
Yeah. So there's just so many things I want to talk about. Where do I start? I had read a while back. It was a podcast actually that I think it was a doctor, physician, therapist, somebody who was saying that she's dealing with a lot of women, and burnout was that was her specialty. And she's like, every woman who comes in is burned out. And, you know, forever it was self-care. You just need more self-care. And she says, that's great. But after the massage, you still go back to this crazy hectic schedule, and it's undone in about 2 seconds. And so she's like, what I'm realizing, what I'm now telling my clients is that it's not more self-care that you need. The care that you need to give yourself is more margin, more time. And she says, you have to start saying no, which is like the hardest thing, I think, for 99% of all women, just to say no, because we think we can do it all. And so I have that nugget that I'm chewing on. And then beginning of the year, so let me back up. business since COVID has just been different. I think for pretty much every person who runs a business, COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And so like before COVID, I mean, I could set my alarms for like, this month is going to be great. This month will be slow. Somebody will call me 5, 4, 3, 2. It was like, I could set my clock by this. And then after COVID, it was just like crazy, just crazy, crazy, crazy. Social media changed where I get a lot of business and algorithms changed. And so I'm just watching these seismic shifts happen underneath me and just going, okay, how do I need to show up as a business person here? Because this is the work the Lord's called me to do. It helps provide for our family. This is not something I can just wing. And so the Lord just really called me into, and about this time I was really deep into John Mark Comer and listening to Practicing the Way. And our D group has started doing the Practicing the Way. And so I think we started with Sabbath, but then the Lord just called me into like a deep, deep, deep walk in silence and solitude in February. And at least every Tuesday, I was spending, 5 to 6 hours. And this is, please hear, this is not normal for me. This was very new. And it was really hard at first. And I was turning my phone off, which, I mean, we want to talk about idols and addiction. That's a whole other conversation. Validation, insecurity, turning off that phone. And just really, I had no agenda. I had a notebook, I had my Bible, and I really got into building fires. I had never built a fire. I sound like such a Southern woman. I never pumped gas. I never built a fire. David, my husband, left on a trip during the snowstorm we had in January. So I had to learn to build fires for me and the boys. And it just became it's just this beautiful rhythm I was starting to do. And it was mesmerizing and realizing just how sad our modern lives are, that we are so far removed from just like physical elements like dirt, fire, earth, water, And so I was making fires. I was sitting by these fires. I'm drinking my coffee and I'm talking to the Lord. And my friend Shanna, who's another friend in the industry, she is so good at doing this. And she just says, she's like, you know what? I really don't know what I'm doing. She said, but I just get alone with the Lord and I do what he tells me. And it normally ends up working really well. And so I was like, and she's crushing it. So I was like, okay, maybe it's time that I start practicing this as well. And it was so neat because, he speaks in a very still, small, quiet voice, and it takes, and he also speaks with time. There are times where, you sit with the Lord and you just get like a word, but I feel like that's so few and far between, but it's a practice of learning to listen to him. And eventually, I'm just writing in my journal. And after about a month of this, like he had given me a business plan and not just, I wasn't just sitting with him for a business plan, but clearly he needed to get my attention. And then when February was over and I had to start doing a lot more work to actually make the money, I was really sad, really, really sad to lose that Tuesday rhythm because I had just grown to love that quiet. And interestingly, so summer's my absolute favorite season. There's no greater season than summer. And like, I always joke that like life is just not worth living in winter. It's just not, I just want to go to sleep. I want to hibernate and I want to wake up when it's spring again. And something happened this year, had this big seismic shift this year. And so the Lord took me on like a big tree journey last year. And so I'm learning about trees. I mean, like nerdy, deep dive, trees in the Bible, trees in general, the hidden life of trees. I'm reading this book by this guy, he's a forester. I don't know, there's arbor, whatever he does. And so I'm outside one day and I'm just kind of meditating and the Lord just hit me between the eyes and he's like, these trees in the fall, all the leaves are gone. And the Lord just said, these trees aren't dead. They're not dead. They're just sleeping. And for some reason, that little phrase all of a sudden just opened me up to just really appreciate these cold winter months. And the Lord was like, maybe, just maybe I've created these seasonal rhythms and you need to reflect them as well personally. And you need to take a time of rest in the winter. And I really, really embraced it. And normally I cannot wait for spring. And this year I was actually kind of a little sad because I had so gotten into my rhythms of just calm and like way calm down the social calendar, sat by the fire as many times as I could, lots of books. And it was just really precious the way the Lord revealed himself to me. And again, we look at these rhythms sometimes and think, oh, how boring. And once you dig into it, you realize how restorative they are. And we need them. And it's the kindness of the Lord to call you into a season of deep, deep rest.
Absolutely. Right. They're not created, on accident. God created us. Then he created like these seasons because he knew that would be what stewards us well in our bodies. And like you said, restores us. And for a lot of times, as I've been speaking to friends lately, some friends are like, I don't even know what restores me, because they haven't given themselves that opportunity, that margin to slow down and to even think about it. So I think that's a beautiful picture of, okay, that's what that could look like.
Yeah. And you're going to be bored. I would tell people that, like, you're prepared, you're going to be bored. Yeah. But I mean, isn't that what we tell our kids? Like, it's good for you to be bored.
Right. So creativity comes from boredom.
To create and to create space. And the neat thing about all of this was I've had this really fun collection come out of all of this silence and solitude. And I'm just realizing my need for more calm and quiet. And I do a lot of color, as you can see around me. And a new series that I've done is very neutral backgrounds. And it still has some color in them. But I like these prisms that you can see behind me. They remind me of like people at parties, like grouped up together, like talking parties. And so the new collection I'm doing is very neutral backgrounds, and there's still like some colorful little spots of color that remind me of grouped people, but I'm calling them quiet parties because it's like, sometimes you go to a party, and you're just like, I'm having a good time. And the other times you just need to kind of go and like find your couple people and sit in the corner. And I like that's been me in this season. Is like I need a couple close people, come sit in the corner and just chill out with me for a minute. Yeah. And so an even cooler thing is that, our subconscious is so incredibly powerful, right? The Lord's just doing so much in the background. We don't even realize it. And so I went from trees and now I'm doing stones. So we're doing a stone study and we've been spending a lot of time in Joshua. It's so cool. And just stones all over this book. And as I'm looking at this series, I'm realizing, I can even like pull up a picture for somebody, that it's stones. I didn't realize that I was painting stones. And I'm going to see if anybody can see it right there. If you can see it, you can get really close.
Yes.
Even like there's gravestones, but even my husband had noticed, he's like, you changed the shape of your square. It's just only nerdy things artists notice. You change the shape of your squares and they're kind of these rounded and they look like a chiseled stone. And it was so cool. I did not realize that. I mean, even until this week, I was talking to my son about something. And I was like, I've been painting stones and I didn't even realize it.
Almost like, and that makes me think of stones of remembrance. It's that remembrance of the season that you've just walked through and really what God's been showing you. And you said in here on some of your questions too, that you are working with him, not just sitting still. Because I do think sometimes when we say that, women hear, well, that's just sitting still. That's not productive. And that's not at all what you're saying, right?
That is not it at all. I was actually looking at this verse. So it was the Matthew 11:29. I need to pull it up in the Message and read it to you. It is, oh my gosh. So I don't know if you ever listened to any of Cole Huffman's sermons. He was at First Evan for a while. And he read this version. I just adore the Message, Eugene Peterson. And here we go. Okay. No, it wants to pull it out in the King James. We don't want King James. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull it up because I will not remember it from memory. And it says, because we're all familiar with, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. And the Message says it this way. He says, oh, it's so good. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Whew.
Oh.
I mean, close in prayer, done. Is that not just incredible?
Yes.
But my friend Jocelyn was telling me that basically, Jesus he loves to use, these double messages. And so he was talking about the yoke of rabbis teaching, but he was also talking about an actual yoke. And so when they were training these oxen to carry these heavy loads, they would actually pair an older, stronger oxen with a young little oxen. I know, right? This is crazy. And so basically the older ox, he takes the biggest part of the load, and they gradually change this yoke to where as that ox grows, he's carrying the appropriate load for his size, and it doesn't feel heavy. It always feels appropriate for his size. And it was just like, again, mind blowing. And like, is that not what the Lord does? He's always there is burdens that are going to be put on you. It's going to hurt. Life's going to really hurt, and there will be suffering, and we're just going to have to learn to expect that. But and there are times where he puts far too much on us. He never says, I'm going to give you more than you can handle. That's not in scripture anywhere. But the way he does grow us tends to be incrementally over time to the ability that we're able to handle what he's got to teach us. And it's just beautiful to see just how loving he is.
What a beautiful visual, honestly. Mm-hmm. And for those of us to also just be encouraged that you're never walking alone. You're never walking alone. You're never carrying the burdens that you think this is too much. This is too much. You're not alone, and you're not having to carry it all yourself. And to have that visual of that stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, because it's heavy. It's heavy. And I think that's it. Like when he gives you that burden that is too big to carry, he's giving you too much, but he's doing most of the carrying. If we're not trying to carry it on our own, if you say, hey, I'm going to get in the yoke with you. And there's been nights, just like life is stressful. And there's just been some nights, where you're just stressed and I can't sleep. And I have literally just prayed, Lord, you have to get in this yoke with me because I can't carry this. Mm-hmm. And it is crazy. Those nights I haven't been able to sleep. Just like, I'm just picturing him getting in this yoke with me. And it's just like, it's crazy.
Man, you've given us some good visuals for sure. I love it. Well, I always love to ask everybody, Hillary, speaking of the older, wiser, and then the younger self, if you could go back to your 10-year-old self, maybe that 5th or 6th grade Hillary Butler, well, would be Hillary Butler, but what would you tell her? What advice would you tell her now?
Oh, so many things. I would love to tell her that you do get to live out these really cool dreams that you have. Like you actually get to do that job and stick with it. Mm-hmm. Because I was a really quirky kid and like always knew I wanted a job in the arts and wanted to do something creative and cut out, pictures, of like interiors and like put them on my door. Super, super quirky. But you never know growing up, like, is this just a dream or do I get to live this life? Mm-hmm. And I think it would be really fun to tell her, like, you get to do it. Just wait. Get through these awkward years. You get to do the fun things.
That's right. And don't give up. Don't give up on your dream. Keep going, keep pursuing, keep trusting because God is faithful and he does let you do that. Thank you. And for everyone too, that's like, okay, I want to see some of this artwork, how they can follow you on Instagram for sure. Yes. But if they're local here in Memphis or they want to drive a little bit, where can they come and like see in person your artwork? Because you've got something cool coming up in September.
I do. September, I think it's the 29th. It is a show at the Memphian Hotel. And so the art will be up. There will be a few pieces that'll be up all month, but we'll have a big closing show. Normally they do an opening show, but they'll do a closing show. And I'll have all these really fun new quiet parties. And I rarely get to release a new collection in person. And I'm really excited about doing that this year. So that'll be released then. And if people want to get on my mailing list, Hillary at HillaryButler.com, you can email me that way and hop on the list and you'll get an invite for sure. But would love to have anybody come out who wants to see some fun art and have fun at a party.
Yes. And I'll put your website in the show notes. I'll put your Instagram so they can find you on there. All the books and the podcasts that Hillary mentioned, we'll put those on there too. Practicing the Way and John Mark Comer. You guys are going to love that. And just thank you so much for sharing your heart and sharing who you are and so much encouragement with us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Fran. You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I always love nerding out about this with you.
I love it too. All right, y'all. Well, find Hillary on Instagram and until next time. y'all be at peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey of restoration and renewal. Remember, you can stay connected with me between episodes by following me on Instagram. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss an episode. And if you found value in our conversation today, I'd truly appreciate it if you leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or share the show with a friend who might benefit from these rhythms. Until next time, may you find peace in knowing that you can show up every day simply as you are. And that is enough. Take care.